and Brian is now the host. So he'll be able to share his screen.
All right, Brian, you want to come get in your email and get that PowerPoint up? Because they're going to see what's on here. And if you need to adjust the temperature and stuff, you can just up and down. Oh, you can move that down out of your way. Oops, somebody else's. That's gonna bring you to Jenna's. You have to sign out of hers. All the way down to the bottom.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
The one little caveat I'll give you is just kind of pay attention to that participant block. So when you start your thing, if you click on the participants, it'll pull up the little sidebar for you. And that way, as people are going to log in, you can admit them into the room.
Okay.
Cool. Call me if you need something.
Will, thank you.
But have a good class.
It is. Oh, no, this is it.
I'm the same way.
Lectureship shows really. No, keep going. What are you doing? Come on.
So I think you have to go
Open
open the
it.
app on your phone, and I think it'll give you. Oh, hit resend, Brian.
Yes, it's me. There. Facilitator guide, I need the presentation. Just here. Yes.
Then I would go to that. You have people that are waiting for you to let them in there,
See the waiting room?
and then you can just admit all of them. Now, are you going to be teaching from over here? You're going to be teaching from behind the
I'm
podium.
probably gonna move.
Okay.
I'll be moving around some. It's the first time I've done this, so I'm not sure. Really, this is gonna work for me.
So I was going to say, if you want to, you're standing behind the podium.
Good
You
morning,
can switch-
everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Do you know how to flip the camera around if you want to stand back here?
Go where? To,
Go.
can't see what's behind there.
So that's going, you're gonna come over here to zoom to this part probably. Yeah, click on that, the gallery view.
Here?
For now, if you want, yeah. So, do we have to stop screen sharing?
What do they see now? They just see the classroom.
Yeah, there's the classroom. So we can switch it. Let me see, stop your screen share. Go up here.
Here.
Oh, okay, click here. Okay. Okay.
Above,
Oh, go click on Zoom. Is there anything down there? Let's try that. Oh, shoot. Minimize that. Okay, now click over here to go to big. Let's go to grid.
Here.
Yeah, let's try that.
That's where it's at.
Okay, how do I get full screen?
Let's go. Thumbnail video? No.
You should be able to make that full screen. Hold on, can I see for a second?
You absolutely can.
Let me see. I never knew this. Right click.
I'll zoom.
Let me go get Jenna. I know she can tell. On my computer with the screen sharing and everything.
Hey, good morning.
You flip it around on yourself.
Yes, I believe that's gonna work best.
Okay. Oh,
Maybe it's the settings.
yeah, there should be a,
Host camera, maybe? No, more. Nope.
go into,
Mm-mm.
I did it last time. It's tricky to figure out sometimes. Cause you know that the toolbar that should be up here where you found like the participants,
Mhm.
that's what I'm looking for. I don't know where it's at.
Is it gonna be in here? Maybe it's behind that. I don't know. Maybe
Oh,
it's you.
there it is. Okay, we're gonna move that over here. There you go. Move this one over here so you still have room. And then it should be facing you now. And then you're all set to present. This one up here. And then you can see everybody through there.
Ta-da!
Awesome. And if there's anything else you need, just let me know.
I will, thank you. Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Brian.
So it's just us, you guys and myself this morning. There's no one else in the classroom. So you guys can feel free to leave yourself off of mute. Otherwise, I'm gonna feel like I'm in the room by myself. In fact, give me a moment, I'm gonna go close the door.
Hurricane Zeta divert my plans for the day.
What happened?
I said this Zeta diverted my plans for the day, so I got to prepare in case it floods over here in Laplace.
Oh, goodness gracious alive. All right, does that make me go? Let's see, how do I flip screens? Down, up, across. Next.
That's just what we need is another hurricane.
Click the button. There we go. Okay, so you guys have been attending Ignite for the past few weeks, yes?
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate you guys being here with me. Please feel free to stop me at any time asking questions. In fact, I prefer to teach that way. I'd rather just teach what you guys want to know. Otherwise, I'll stick with the material that's been presented, and we'll just get through. We'll get through that. Everybody has their participant guide. Do you at least have that pulled up
Yes.
Yep.
or printed out?
Yes.
Hold on.
Okay, excellent. At least something that you can kind of refer back to would be good. So this is the first time that I have presented before. I've been in real estate 4 years. Come January. This is the first class that I've taught. I am a buyer's agent on Team Navigators with Manley Castisu. However, I was an individual agent prior to that. I was on my own. Let me add Jay. Somebody's still coming in. So we're going to be, again, we're going to just take it by ear. I'm going to follow this presentation as they've got it, unless we kind of get off on a tangent and we feel like we need to spend time somewhere else. So I'm going to be referring back down to this since I've not taught Ignite before, so just bear with me. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be breaking down and applying some of the tactics to tackle and approach some of the common things that come up when you get ready to begin your negotiations. Right, we're going to also look at, analyze some counter tactics, kind of getting your mind in the right spot whenever maybe you get a counter offer or you're having a conversation with the agent on the other side of the deal before an offer gets presented. And then we're going to also refer and discuss a few things that they call the 3 Ps, which is going to be discussed in greater detail later. Yet it's prepare, present, and then position yourself. So we're going to kind of go through that through some practical application. And perfect. So you guys have gone through some of these other things, right? So these other items here on this list, you guys should feel comfortable with, or at least have seen them before. We're going to be focusing on negotiating contracts today. And you know, everything depends on your ability to be able to negotiate for your client. It is a central part. It is an integral part of what we do every day. We only get to the closing table when we negotiate on the front end. Sometimes negotiations happen in the middle during your inspection period or right at the end of your inspection period. But negotiations are a part of what we do on an everyday basis. I'll tell you that it's important to try to find a win-win situation because, you know, I don't know, regardless of what side of the party, what side of the deal you represent, whether or not it be the listing side or the buyer side, you still want to find a win-win, because if everybody doesn't kind of give a little bit or kind of come to an agreement somewhere along the way, you're never going to get to the closing table, which is what's important for us. But it's also important for your clients. They either can move on to get into a new place or whatever reason they have for moving on. And negotiations can make it or break it. You know, if you've got some give and some somebody who's willing to give a little bit on both sides, then you know, you're going to be able to make it through. Questions thus far? You guys feel free to interrupt with any questions that you may have. Otherwise, we'll just kind of continue going. Conversation is good. So these are the few things that we are going to be discussing today, breaking down common points in negotiation, those 3 Ps we spoke of, analyzing those counters, what happens when you get a counter offer, kind of getting your mind ready for the next step, should it come. Real play, where we're going to actually put the 3 Ps into use. We're going to recap it, and then we're going to talk about some daily success habits. And then everybody has an opportunity to make some phone calls. Yay! Myself included. I'm going to include myself in on that, which is awesome, which is what we should be doing, right? So moving on. All right, so, negotiation is it's a bargaining process between the 2 parties. Sometimes it happens, I would say more often than not, in the very beginning, it happens between the 2 agents, where you're kind of sizing up each other and getting a feel for kind of where everybody is. And the goal is to find some common ground. So that the graphic on the screen is kind of showing you some negotiations, how it happens between the buyer and the seller and their agent. It also happens between the agents that are involved. Like I said, I like to make that phone call. I like to call the agent and have a conversation first. Sometimes you get little tidbits of information that might help your side, whether or not it be the buyer side or the seller side. Just something that might give you a little bit of a leg up. Negotiations oftentimes take place in 2 different areas of the transaction. The first is the offer, right? It can be a seller that types up an offer. So regardless of what side of the deal that you're on, when you're getting ready to type up the offer, what are you going to present? So you've got to get the contract signed, right? That's the first part. The second one is the option period. And this happens while under contract, and the goal is to get to close the contract. So the option is going to be the stuff that kind of happens in the middle, primarily your inspection period. We kind of go back to negotiation tables, and then you've got the appraisal that happens later. So those are a few points in which you can negotiate and apply what you've learned through reading or through experience. Now, there's supposed to be a group exercise, right, at this point, where we're supposed to get into groups of 3 and 4. I'm not sure how that happens when everybody is on a Zoom call. Yet, here's the activity, and I believe we'll just have a conversation. Everybody will unmute themselves, and we'll just have a conversation about that for a little bit of time. So the activity reads that we get into small groups of 3 or 4 people, and then we're going to have a conversation, which is great for us, regarding your responses to the questions that are on this screen. Right. We're going to do this for about 5 minutes or so, just to have some casual conversation. Then we're just going to move on for that. So if you would, I'm going to unmute you. So if you're having conversations in the back, you may want to stop this. Everybody's unmuted, right? Everyone can hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good. So first, how can your ability to negotiate affect the outcome of a deal? No wrong answers.
If you're not a good negotiator, you can possibly not get the best deal, or possibly not even get the deal for your client.
Yep, absolutely. Your ability to negotiate, but if you've never done that before, maybe you're a little timid, right? Maybe you don't push back in areas that you should kind of push back. Maybe what's being requested is just an absorbent amount of whatever, right? And you have the opportunity to do better for your buyer or seller. And so having some skills or having some knowledge, even just having the confidence to push back on the other person, right? So absolutely. Anybody else? All right, so let's, if not, then how about the next question? What are some ways that we negotiate in everyday life? I've got one. And I'll tell you, it has a lot to do with children. 'Cause I have right? It's time to get out of the bed, eat your vegetables, brush your teeth, right? Obviously, we do that. What about specifically in real estate? Are there any things where we negotiate there? Just dealing with your clients?
But just negotiating time, just being, when they're overly demanding, negotiating, saying, okay, we're not gonna keep doing this over and over again. We're gonna set a certain time and we're going to be here, and then we're gonna set a time block and do it within this time frame, and then that's gonna be it. And, no staying out till 8 o'clock and and just being very firm in the negotiations of what the expectations are.
Negotiating your time with that client that says, I want to see 12 houses today.
Exactly.
Really? You want to see 12 today? Probably not the best use of anybody's time. So negotiating that. What about negotiating real expectations?
You negotiate price and the outcomes and things in the house that people may want or don't want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The material things that are in the house, right? Obviously, we negotiate price, right? Those are one of the things. So it's one of the main things that every buyer or seller wants to negotiate on, but there's other things that's involved in that. Absolutely. It's the some of the stuff. Curtains. There's a lot of problems that people get in themselves in trouble with curtains and window coverings and blinds. Those are for whatever reason a very hot topic. I've even heard of someone removing mirrors a few days out of the bathrooms a few days before the closing, and it became contentious. But anyway, so everyday life. So we negotiate with our children, we negotiate with our spouses or significant others. You negotiate when you buy a car. So whether or not you feel like you've done negotiating before or you're any good at it, you've probably got more experience in negotiating than you feel like you do. I think a lot of it has more to do with confidence level and how you feel you're doing for yourself or for those that you represent. And always remember that no matter what you're negotiating, you represent your client. You represent the buyer, and your job is to get them the best deal that you can get for them. Same thing for the seller. If you represent the seller, your job is to get them the best deal that you can. And sometimes that puts you and I at odds, right? Two different agents at odds. But what we really want that win-win, right? We both, as part of our work and our job and what we do, how we get paid, is we get to the closing table. So we as agents automatically want to kind of get to a win-win. We need to work on our clients to make sure that they realize what that win-win looks like. Are there any skills that negotiators need to possess?
Yes, absolutely. The first one is listening, for sure, to make sure that you listen. And I think the second one is asking questions to make sure that you truly understand what the real issue is before you try to beleaguer the point of what they're actually going for, because you could be negotiating for something that's not what they're really after. And they really want something else, and they're just pushing a point to try to get there. So listening and then trying to get to the real gist of the problem, and then working through that issue and getting to a resolution.
Yeah, listening to both your client and listening on the other side to try to understand what it is, what's at the heart of the problem, what's at the heart of what they're wanting. Because sometimes they don't know how to they don't know what they want. Sometimes they don't know how to express what they want or what's important to them. And so part of our exercise, what we're going to do later, is asking some open-ended, closed-ended questions to extrapolate a little bit more about what it is that they're looking for. Anyone else? Skills, listening. I will tell you, I would like to add that a skill is not taking it personal.
Yeah.
You're going to be at odds with agents, other brokerages, other places. You're also going to be on the opposite side of people in the same office. And although we know each other, we respect each other, right? And we have the same culture within our brokerage. We are on the opposite sides of things. So we have to negotiate, not take it personal, and try to keep it business, right? And I do think that's a skill, because for myself included, it used to be difficult to kind of separate the two. Not so much anymore. You just kind of get accustomed to, it's just what's best for your client, or take the approach of it's what my client is asking me to do. And so it kind of takes you out of the equation. Why is it important? Why is asking questions important when negotiating? And we spoke of this earlier, I think.
Communication.
I'm sorry?
Just communication, just to find
Yeah.
out what you're looking for. And
Yeah. Well, you don't want any confusion, right? You want to make sure that you're asking the right questions when negotiating. And I say negotiating, you're going to negotiate with your client to, again, those realistic expectations. You're going to negotiate with the buyer or the seller on the opposite side of you. So you've got to make sure that you understand for clarity what everybody is looking for. And just because you ask all the great questions, does that mean that every deal is going to work out? No, absolutely not. Because sometimes it just doesn't come together. Sometimes your client needs more for whatever reason that the other side is willing to offer up. Maybe they just can't, whether it's a financial thing, maybe it's things that they can't give up. Maybe it's a closing date they can't move. Right? So asking questions about all of that stuff is important on the front end, so you know how to approach it when you get ready to write that offer and present that. So, after the investment of moving a lead through the process and getting them from point A to point B, you certainly you've spent some time with your client, whether on the listing side or the buyer side, and you're not wanting this deal to fall through. You do want your time and effort to pay off. And so your ability to negotiate is going to directly influence the rate of contracts that you close. If you're a poor negotiator, whatever that looks like for you, you're going to close less deals than somebody who's a great negotiator, right? And that's just inherent. And I think that just kind of makes sense, right? Okay, you guys in your guide, if you would go back to page 4 in your participant guide. Once the offer is made, there's 3 possible outcomes to any contract. It can either be accepted off the bat, which is great. That's a great feeling. It can be rejected, which is not so great. Or it can be countered, which to me means, okay, they're negotiating. They are open to conversation, right? If the offer is rejected or countered, that's where your negotiation skills can shine. Just because it's rejected doesn't mean it's over. It means they didn't care for, or you didn't communicate well enough, but they didn't care for the first offer. Maybe it was too far off. Maybe you didn't understand something. That's going to call, in my opinion, for a conversation with the agent to kind of get a better idea of what's going on the other side. So you'll know whether or not you want to reapproach and submit another offer. And just because it's rejected doesn't mean that you can't submit another offer. That's just part of your negotiation. Again, there's another activity here at this point. We're going to brainstorm some negotiation issues. What are some of the things that are going to come up in your negotiations that have the potential of coming up during the process, right? So at what point, what are some of the things that we can that we're going to negotiate on? So they've allowed about 10 minutes for this to happen. So we can kind of discuss whatever it is you like. Or you could take a moment and write down a few ideas.
I guess one thing in the negotiation, Brian, is I always get, I guess I have to work on my skills, is the counter offer with the rejection response.
Yeah.
What to choose, what not to choose, lower the price, or asking for more cost of things. I always get a little bit of, I don't know. I'm always trying to reduce the price and counter offer and then ask for some of the repairs to be done.
Yes. When it comes to inspection item issues, I prep. I have that conversation with my clients before. Now, I will recommend, I work primarily with buyers, and I do not purport to know everything that there is about buyers, right? But I prefer buyers. I like working with them. So when an inspection report comes back, I try to let them know some of the things that could happen. Let them know some of the things that's going to come up or has a potential for coming up, especially from the buyer's perspective. We want to look at big picture items first. And some of the bigger ticket items are going to be your HVAC system. It could be the roof, right? The age of the roof. What's the condition of that? Those are two big ticket items. Plumbing can be an issue, especially if there's broken pipes underneath the house. Electrical panel, if it's completely outdated, it's not, and they've done some home DIY type electrical stuff, right? That has a chance of burning the house down. Well, that's a problem. Those are the things I don't worry about. I try to get my clients not to worry so much about, don't worry about paint. Paint is a weekend, right? You can change the color. There's nicks in the walls. You can address that. You can change ceiling fans. Don't get too caught up on seals or caulking around the windows. That's an easy weekend. That's an easy fix and easy weekend stuff. I try to get my clients just to focus on the big stuff and then work our way down from there. And also try to keep them reasonably tempered, reasonably measured with what they're going to ask. And when it comes to asking for money or stuff, price reduction is simple, probably easier, especially if your clients are putting money down, because whether or not they do money down or they take some money off their sales price, it's still kind of the net to them. It's the same to them. But if they're doing 100% financing or something, you've got to be mindful and have a conversation with your lender about what's going to be allowed, how much money can be done or be given. And you want to stay away from the under the table stuff, right? Because nobody wants to get their hands slapped by either their LREC or by lender or brokerage or whoever else the real estate police involves. And there's not really real estate police, it's just a term. So anybody else? Inspections, that's a really good. Yep.
One thing that just seems to come up, and it's a silly issue, is home warranties.
Yeah.
Home warranties. Do you guys in your business thus far, and forgive me, I don't know how long each of you have been in real estate, but are you experiencing a lot of pushback on home warranties?
I had somebody try to negotiate some minor things, or we didn't know, but we thought were minor things with the AC unit. And so instead of her having a licensed HVAC person come out, she chose to purchase the warranty for my buyer. The
Okay.
seller did. You know, it's $695 and it's for a whole year, and it doesn't even matter, you know, if you bring your own washer and dryer, if something goes wrong with it and they can't fix it, they'll replace it with a brand new one. So it's a no-brainer. It's $700, $695 or something like that. Yep. My experience with anyone else? Yeah, I think that's a good trade-off. See, and you're using some negotiation skills right there. You're given this instead of that, or what can we do instead of having a serviceman come out and do the service, right? So I think that's awesome. I think those are skills right there. And it's so minor, it's so easy. We don't really think of it as part of our negotiation, as that we are doing negotiation or having any kind of negotiation. But that's an easy thing to do, for sure. It's a great alternative. Anyone else?
Brian, I just wanted to get your opinion. What do you do when you know there's a water heater and you know that they have that smell in the water heater and they try to do the cheap little $75 fix instead of replacing it, which should be replaced, maybe 6 months to a year, do you negotiate that and ask them to replace it or not? Because you know that can get costly.
You know, a water heater can run you several $100s. I would say it kind of depends upon what else is in your inspection report. If the water heater is the biggest deal, is the biggest item, then I would hope that the seller would kind of help me sell that, especially if it's relatively minor things that we're asking for. I have seen inspection responses when I was an individual agent that came back with a whole laundry, like 24 items on an inspection response, which is, in my opinion, a lot to ask for. I have seen people buy a house after the inspection report and never ask for a thing, ready to move forward. I think you've got to take it all into perspective. And I know that that's not the answer that you were looking for, but I would say that if that's the only thing that your client is asking for, you know, maybe they can split the costs. There's nothing wrong with splitting the cost of a new water heater as opposed to a fix or just replacing the heating elements. So there's always that option. There's always the option of a sales price reduction if that's something that can come up, especially if your client is putting money down. You know, whether or not they save it on a water heater by the other person buying it, or you save it on your down payment, it's 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. But you know, you got to do what it's a water heater, and you know, it's hundreds of dollars, not thousands. And does your client want to lose the house? I'm assuming they're buyers. Do they want to lose the house over a water heater? I mean, if it's that big of an issue, then maybe they do, but it's a water heater. So I think perspective is important for us to be able to kind of put our clients into.
So Brian, other than price and inspection, what do you see as other big negotiation issues?
Price and inspection. What about the closing date? Right? We don't know. And again, from a buyer standpoint, we don't know what the seller's needs are. We don't know if they have to be out in a certain time. You know, if you're, you know, in this market, I don't know if you guys have experienced that. We've had a lot of multiple offer situations, right? Closing date could be a big issue. It could be the deciding point. You know, if their house is under contract and they've got to get out at a certain time, you know, the closing date could be the decision maker, not necessarily price. Just because it's the highest price offer doesn't mean it's the best deal. The closing date could be a big influencer. The type of lending that's involved. You know, is it going to be something that's going to take 2 months versus a cash deal that could get done in 30 days? You know, the type of, you know, how you're paying, how your client is paying for that. From a seller standpoint, you know, again, looking at those things, what does that look like from a seller? If they've got to be out of the house at a certain point, it's going to be more attractive to have somebody that can get it done in 30 days versus 45 or 60, especially if it's a predicated offer or something like that they've got to get out. Maybe they're in that situation themselves. So we've got price, we've got the closing date. Obviously, we've got repairs. Let me throw this out there. What about closing costs? You guys include closing costs in your deals?
Yep.
Yep. If you're like me, you do. You know, that could be the decision maker for the other party, both parties. Maybe it's too much money for the seller to give, or maybe not enough for the buyer, right? So that's absolutely. We spoke earlier of furniture, right? Anybody had an experience with furniture before, excluding window treatments?
I only
No?
had an experience with a chair. It wasn't a lot of furniture.
A chair? What happened with the chair?
I represented the sellers and the buyer wanted a chair because it was upholstered to match the curtains. But it wasn't a problem. My seller said she could have it.
Awesome. That's awesome. I just recently negotiated a deal. We just got under contract a couple of days ago for the lawnmower. So,
I've heard
you
of
know,
that.
yeah, lawnmowers, it was pretty easy. Yet a lawnmower in a contract isn't necessarily something that happens every day of the week. So we've got furniture. From the seller side, you know, you guys can make sure that you exclude certain things from the beginning, from the get-go. I've had church pews that were excluded. People had a church pew from a church. Chandeliers are oftentimes excluded. If it's not in the contract, it's up for negotiation, right? So make sure that that you put it in there. Window treatments, of course, appliances are almost always asked for. And I would personally, I list them all. I try to list them all because I don't want any miscommunication. I don't want anybody to say, well, it wasn't listed in the contract or whatever. So I always list all the appliances that are in there. Any other household items? I guess the lawnmower kind of fall into that for household items. Anything else? Anything else you guys feel like could be something that is a negotiating, something that might come up?
I think
Right.
the new one is wall mounts for your TVs. I don't understand that because I feel like isn't a wall mount specifically for the TV that you purchase? And people are going to take their TVs with them, right?
People generally do take their TVs. Yes, I haven't run into a big issue with wall mounts. I would say that they're a part of the house. What I would tell you is, as the seller, if your seller wants to take the wall mounts, take them down before you list the house. Take them down and repair the holes and repaint it, or whatever the case is, before you begin to show it. This way it will not be an issue, right? If a buyers go in and see it and they see it in the house, it's up for them asking for it. If you absolutely do not want it to be asked for, don't have it in there if at all possible. Wall mounts, chandeliers, furniture you can't always move. But some of these other things you can. You can take down TVs, you can take down wall mounts, you can take down artwork. I've gone into houses where there's been a great big mirror over the fireplace, over the mantle, as opposed to a TV being mounted or being up. Take it down, if at all possible, or make it very explicit and clear in your listing, in your offer, in your counter, that these things are not staying, or whatever the case is. Just leave no room for doubt, no room for question. That's a good one. Wall mounts. I've heard of those coming up before and being an issue before. I've not experienced wall mounts personally. They're just not that big of a issue. It's a wall mount.
Brian,
But
getting
they're
back
not
to
universal. Go
Brian,
ahead.
this is Vincent. Getting back
Yes,
to
sir.
inspections, how do you deal
Yeah.
with fogged windows? Not just one or two, I'm talking about several. And when they ask you to replace or give you an allowance for whatever it costs to get them replaced. I mean, it's not going away. It's fogged and it's not going away.
So from the buyer standpoint, one, we got to figure out how bad they are, and it's whether or not something that the buyer can live with
Mhm.
or not live with. And then from the seller standpoint, how many of them are there, and whether or not they're going to be willing to replace it. The remedy is either they can replace them all. You can ask for a sales price reduction, but you need to have a quote. You need to have a dollar figure. I would
Right.
say don't just have it random, right? You need to have somebody go out there and give you a quote so that you know exactly what you're looking for and what you're asking for. So that you've got some teeth in your response, some teeth in your request to show that these things are an issue and this is how much it's going to take. So it could be a sales price reduction. Maybe they're only, you know, is there a compromise of only doing the worst ones, right? Maybe there's 5 or 6 that are in a prominent area of the house in the living room. Is there a willingness to negotiate on how many of them get repaired? So there are absolutely those options and that's how I would kind of present and go through. And one of the things that you could do as well, Vincent, is have a conversation with the agent. Pick up the phone, call them, and say, hey, look, this is where my clients are on these windows. You know, you've got 12 windows that are fogged. You know, it's half the windows in the house. What do you see as a remedy? And have that conversation instead of back and forth with a piece of paper, which could eventually kill the deal, because just through conversation, you may find a remedy between the two parties. Because your client, you should know by this point what your client's expectations are, what they feel like they've got to have in order to be able to move forward. And so, although it's not on paper, you can get a pretty firm understanding just by picking up the phone and saying, hey, Brian, this is Vincent. You know, where are we on these windows? My client's really on me about getting these windows done. Where do you think your client's going to stand on that? Will they be willing to replace them? Will they be willing to replace half of them? At least you're getting something for your client as opposed to killing the deal and walking away. I hope that helps, Vincent.
Yeah, it's a real deal. We actually worked it out. So, but
good. What was the outcome?
They wound up replacing them. I don't know if you've heard of Richland. Richland does windows and stuff. They specialize in. They came in, gave them a quote, and they decided because of the offer that was made on the house, the price, they went ahead and just replaced them and just moved forward. You know, it went pretty well. I was just curious.
Yeah, and you know, it's all about trying to find a happy spot, trying to find that happy medium between the two parties. And nothing's written in stone. Sometimes they just either one party just will not move or budge either way. And that's an unfortunate situation because in here with us, you know, it's all about win-win. And sometimes it just can't be had. We've all had. And in fact, I lost a deal over windows. I had the buyers and there were 12 windows in the house that needed to be replaced and I couldn't get anywhere. And the agent and I, nothing between us. It's just kind of where the deal fell apart. And my clients wound up finding a better house for themselves anyway. So those things are meant to be.
If anybody doesn't know, do not pressure wash windows. It will break the seals on the windows. That
is correct. Don't pressure wash them. Use a brush, a soft bristle brush and some soap or something.
Yep.
And just scrub them. Don't pressure wash them. There. Any other questions? Any other ideas? Perfect. That was a really good conversation. Appreciate that. You guys can go ahead and turn to page 5. Right. So we've got some more, a little bit more detail about the common points of negotiation. Obviously, there's price, and then there's everything else, which is terms, right? And those are the 2 categories. Now, while the sales price is the primary factor in the negotiations, it's not necessarily the bottom line. As we spoke of earlier, there are other things that come up. In a situation where the seller receives some multiple offers, right? So this is some of the things that we've spoken of earlier. It's not going to be, price is not going to be always the bottom line. There's going to be other things. It could be financial. It could be time-based. How much time do they need? The seller's time and the buyer's time, or both. When the buyer and the seller can't agree on a sales price, it says that there are 5 terms here that come into play. They are closing costs, right, which we spoke of a little bit earlier. How much does your client need? Can they get away with a little bit less? Can they make do, or do they just not have the money? If they're first-time home buyers, they don't have a lot of cash laying around. You know, that could be a point of negotiation. Closing date. If the sellers are in a time crunch themselves, an earlier closure date is going to be maybe more attractive to them. If you're in a multiple offer situation, getting it done sooner may be more attractive to your seller. Conveyances, what's going to be transferred over, your other inspection items, whether or not they're going to give money off the sales price, so on and so forth. Earnest money, that's your deposit. You know, how serious are they? How much money are they willing to put on the table and possibly lose if the deal goes south, right? So it kind of shows their willingness and their eagerness to move forward. And then going back to repairs, whether or not you're going to ask for a lot or ask for very little, and all of those things. Now, some of the repairs you're not going to really know until you get into your inspection a little bit more. But again, those are all areas in which your negotiation kind of comes back into play. Any ahas at this point? Anything where we've kind of talked about where someone's going, oh, well, I never thought about that before. Not that you have to. Perfect. Here. Using negotiation tips to respond to common points. So if you guys would turn to page 6. And this is an activity in which we would pair up in 1 or 2 in pairs of 2, obviously pairs. And at this point, we would kind of use someone new. I would like for you guys to read through the list of the negotiation tips. So on your page, which is different than mine, you should have a list of negotiation tips. After reading those tips, I want you to look back to page 5 in your participant guide and choose one of the common points to negotiate. And let's talk about that, whether or not it's price or one of the other listed terms. I want you to write down what you've chosen, or just mark that somehow on page 5. And then we're going to brainstorm a list of ideas of how we might respond to that negotiation point. And we'll just ask 1 or 2 people just to kind of pick and kind of let us know what you want to discuss. And we can discuss that as a group because it's not feasible to separate into teams. And so we'll just talk about that. So you guys take a minute, look back to page 5, see what's there. And then if there's some specifics about that negotiation, we can discuss it. I'm going to step off camera for just a moment. I just looked at my cell phone. My mother-in-law and I have this text that goes back and forth where we share what our blood pressure is. I don't know why or how we got onto that. I give platelets on a regular basis, and they always take my blood pressure, and it's every couple weeks. And so I'm always sending her a text. So my blood pressure last week was 118/68. Hers is 128/68 today. So I don't know why we talk about that, but we do. Blood pressure is important. All right. I am going to unmute everyone. Perfect. Thank you. Maybe someone who hasn't been quite so vocal this morning. What's on page 5 that you guys want to touch base on and talk about what might be some negotiation? Don't be shy. I have your names. I'll choose you.
I'll jump in if you want me to.
Perfect. I love volunteers. So what's on page 5?
They got price, they got terms, closing costs, closing date, and convey. I want to talk about price, if that's
Okay.
okay.
Sure.
You know, on the listing side, I know we're talking about buyers, but on the listing side, when you do your CMA and you come up with a market price, well, the buyer's agent is also looking at that too.
Yeah.
His commitment is to his client. So they
Yes.
both know, right? They both know where it should be. And I'm trying to get to.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah. I know. But you know, the listing client mostly all the time says, you know, you tell me 254, but I want to sell for 258. And you tell them, look, we can do that, but if we don't get any bites or anything in a couple of weeks, we need to seriously talk about reducing the price. Is it okay to tell them, look, buyer's agent's also looking at this too. So, you know, he knows. So at what point do you balance that price up in there where you both know how much it should go for? You understand what I'm saying?
So sellers, you got to depend, you know, there's a lot that goes into that. You know, you've got to, you got to weigh what the market looks like.
Right.
For sellers at certain price points in this area, you couldn't keep a house on the market. It was gone in 24 hours, right? And so in some of your sellers, they could get a little bit more. And yes, the buyer's agents are looking at the same information.
Right.
But if you've got a client that wants to sell a house for higher than what you feel like it really should be listed at, what about discussing with them getting the amendment signed for a price reduction before you list it or while you list the paperwork? You know, have that conversation with your seller. Hey, Mr. Seller, I recommend 250. You want to list it at 260. We'll try that for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but I'm going to ask for your commitment in reducing this sales price after that time frame to my price point or to a price point where I feel like. How do you feel about that? Can we get that amendment signed today? Right? Go ahead and get that into place. You know, that you can absolutely do. Have a conversation with your seller about show them the numbers. You know, you've shown them the CMA. Maybe you need to print out the specific listings and say, look, this house is the same size, the same square footage within 100 square feet. It's the same age. It's got the same materials. It's granite. It's the same backsplash, so on and so forth. Their house sold at this much, right? Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie.
Is that amendment a standard? Is that amendment a standard form, or you use a blanket down and write it up? Is that a standard Keller Williams form or the amendment for the price reduction? If it
Yeah,
doesn't,
you can. Yeah, there's a standard form for that.
Okay.
You can do an amendment.
Verbally, I've been
listing.
doing that, but I've never ever filled out the amendment. I just verbally I've been telling clients that.
It's a listing amendment. You know, it just depends upon your client. If you've got a client who's pretty firm in that, or you feel like they're not going to be quite so willing to come down even after they've agreed to it early on, you're just going to have a listing that's just going to sit there, especially if it's severely overpriced. You also have the option of the opportunity where a buyer submit. If you get 2 offers on a house, 2 or 3 offers on a house, and they're all coming in at a lower price point, but around a similar price point, that's where the market's telling you the house should be sold at. Okay. And then that's a conversation for you to have with your seller as well. Hey, Mr. Seller, Miss Seller, you know, we've gotten 2 offers on the house, but they're around 250, not 260. You know, maybe we need to consider one of those options or consider our price point. Right? The market determines the price. Market determines the sales price. That doesn't mean the seller has to sell. They just may not sell.
Right. I got it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. What else? What else? How about, what about you, Julie? Got anything that jumps out?
I'd like to just kind of go back to the inspection.
Okay.
How do you talk your buyers through? I know you kind of touched on it earlier, but how do you talk them through not focusing on the small stuff and really actually attacking the big ticket items and leaving those little nitpicky things just for weekend warrior projects and get them to just kind of see the big picture and step back?
I think your items are gonna be on a sliding, kind of a sliding scale based on what's on it, right? If you've got big picture items, which are your air conditioning or your roof or something,
Right.
absolutely, you need to be leaning towards those and figuring out what that looks like. But if your biggest issue is, some grounding issues in the electrical, those then become your big items. I would have them consider what their own home looks like, what their existing home looks like.
Okay.
Consider about if you were selling, right? If you were selling your home right now, especially if they're a homeowner, an existing homeowner, how would you approach, a presentation like that? Consider the seals around your door frames. Consider the grounding issues that may be in your own house. Is it a big issue for you right now? Do those items still work and do they still function? What if you were selling your house today and someone asked you for, a myriad of small weekend warrior, a paint, painting a room? How would that kind of affect you? And also take them back to the reason why. Why are they moving on? Why are they either getting out of that rental and into a house? Why are they downsizing their existing home because all their children are grown and they're getting from a larger home into a smaller home, or vice versa? They have a growing family. Go back to their why and figure out what motivates them and have that conversation again. Is it worth losing the house because you're going to move from here to there, right? Your motivation, this is why you're doing this in the first place. Do you really want to lose it over, one fogged window? Or do you really want to lose it over, whatever those items are, a small plumbing issue, or the electrical outlets aren't grounded the way they need to? Maybe the wires are wired backwards, and trying to get them back to their why. Do you have something specific, or you can talk to me afterwards about it if you just want to kind of hash that out around?
There's just to the point of it gets to be too much, and just going back to not just inspection but aesthetics. Just the wanting the paint done or something of that nature, and saying, come on, guys.
Maybe it's not the house for them. Maybe that's their way of telling you that we feel like we're exhausted. We're tired of looking. We're now going to settle. Maybe that's what they're trying to tell you.
Yeah, maybe so.
If they've looked at a bunch of houses, they haven't found, because in some price points, the houses aren't on the market because there may be a lot.
And we're running out of things in their price point, and they want to stay in a certain school district, and it's just getting to the point where there's nothing really that fits their mold, and we're just trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
And I would say put them in the best position to make an offer fast on a house that they like.
Yep.
Make sure that all the lending and everything is in order. Make sure that their house, if they have to sell it, is
it went in one day,
gone.
So they gotta buy.
Right. So perspective is going to be key. Making sure that they understand the position that they are now in, unless they have some sort of interim living arrangements. If they can rent for 6 months for a change in the market, if that happens, realistic expectations of what the inspection is going to look like. You know, what was asked on their house? Was there any inspection on the house they sold? You know, we put
It was very
relate
minimal.
it back to them. It was minimal. Yeah. Okay. And relate, you know, try to relate it back. Sometimes there's big ticket items on their home too. And try to relate it back to them. It could be something where they need to maybe rent for 6 months for a change in the market. I would just stay on top of it. You know, just make sure that they're ready to pull the trigger on something as soon as they find the one that they like. But
Maybe
it's about perspective.
Yeah, maybe I just need to go back to the consult meeting again and have a real conversation with them about what they want.
And I find it to be, that conversation is easier when it's a little bit self-deprecating. Maybe I misunderstood. What is it that we need to be looking for? Can we change the price point? We've seen everything in this one. Can we go up a little bit? Is there any room to go up? Maybe, because that's going to change. That may change your results. You know, you'd be surprised what $10,000 in a price point will do in the results that you're finding. And it's not going to make that much difference in their lending if they're having to get, you know, some sort of lending in place. It's going to make a very minor change in what their payment looks like. So I think that's a great idea. Going back to a consult, making sure that everybody's still on the same page, expectations of what they're trying to find, review what you have found and what they've looked at. I have had experience where a lot of people will say, oh, I want to only stick at this price point and I don't want to go anything else. Well, then they begin, and I set up a criteria, right? Based on what they've told me, because that's what they assured me was the final price. It never fails. They begin to send me stuff from Realtor or whatever, $10,000 higher, $25,000 higher, right? It's like, okay, well, here's where we really are. This is what we're really willing to do. So I would tell you that anytime I set somebody up on an automatic search in the multiple listing service, I always search for $10,000 or $15,000 more.
Okay.
Always. Because oftentimes, you know, sometimes you can bring that pricing down. Sometimes the house sits on the market for a while and it comes down. Or, you know, if I set a house at if they tell me they want to look for 250, I'm going to set my search for 265. Sometimes a house at 270 has a price reduction and now it's within range, right? So maybe it's the search criteria, but I find that people are oftentimes willing to go more than what they tell me in the beginning that they're willing to do. But I love the idea of a consult and redoing that again. Make sure everybody's still on the same page. Make sure that they're in a good frame of mind. Show them the real market reports for the price point that they're looking at in the areas that they're looking at. Look, these houses aren't sitting on the market. If you like a house, somebody else does too. What are you willing to lose a house for? You know, the items that you're asking for worth losing the house over. It's hard to get over big ticket items when you know that there's going to be a big expense. If the air conditioning unit is falling in on itself, or, you know, it has some serious concerns, you know, that's depending on what's going on, that's $10,000 to $15,000 for a new system. Maybe the home warranty comes in. I have had home warranties where they have replaced units. I have had home warranties where they wouldn't touch it, right? But it's at least an option to present to your clients. The same thing with a roof. Maybe the seller's willing to claim it on an insurance. If there was a recent storm that came, we've had 6 storms hit the state of Louisiana. It's not unreasonable, right, for something like that to happen. So maybe it's a conversation with the seller. Mr. Seller, Miss Seller, the roof is a concern for my buyers, yet how can we approach that? Where are your sellers on that? Can we split the cost? Is it something that we can kind of give and take a little bit where we split the cost on a new roof? Is it something that can be done through insurance where it would be a minimal deductible for the seller, but then the buyer gets a new roof? So It's not an easy position to be in, but I think you're going to be on the right track.
And thanks for that. I think that'll help too, just moving that price point a bit. And I think they are able. So I just need to have that conversation as well.
Yeah, and be open to having a conversation with the agent on the other side. You'd be surprised. Don't think all is lost until all is lost. And don't make assumptions. Don't assume that you know what the seller is going to be willing to do or willing to take, because you don't know what situation that they're in either. You don't know what it looks like for them on the other side. Have a conversation. You need to have conversations with your peeps. Have a conversation with the agent on the other side. If it doesn't work out, it's not going to work out. But save yourself the time instead of spinning your wheels and grinding away at a house that they're never going to come to an agreement on. I'd rather know it early than 2 weeks later. And so would they. They would like to be able to move on and entertain another offer or other buyers or whatever the case is. But at least you have a better idea where you're positioned at, where your clients are, and you can move on. So, good deal.
Thanks.
What else? One more? Some of you have muted yourself back. Maybe you've got some noise in the background. Y'all need me to pick?
I'll do it again. Vincent.
Okay. Go ahead, Vince.
What about just contingencies? Buyer has a house, needs to sell his house, wants to move right into the other house. How do you get that to where that's not happening? He may have to go rent something for a few weeks or a month or whatever. How do you deal with that to make it bam, bam, and it works for both people, for both sides?
Man, I wish there was a magic pill for that. But there's not.
Okay.
There's really not, but you need to ask, if I have a seller and, I always talk to my sellers about what will you do, right? Especially if they're going to sell and try to buy. What will you do if when we put your house on the market, it sells in a day or sells in a week?
Right.
And you haven't found anything yet. What will be your intermediate living arrangements? Do you have plans for that? Have you considered what that looks like? Maybe there is an opportunity for them to have a short-term rental somewhere. Maybe there's family nearby that they can sleep on, depending, of course, the point of situation. But if there's a family member that they can stay with for a month or two, depending on how quickly their home sells. I've had where sellers listed their house, sold in a week, and they're taking their time finding what it is they want to buy, right? Because they have a place to go already. Mom and dad can put them up. So they're not in a huge hurry. They're continuing to search for that house. So a contingency wasn't an issue for them. I have had others where their house was on the market for 6 months, got under contract the last week of a listing agreement, and then they were in a hurry to try to find something, right? And so then it just kind of speeds things up. How fast can we get into the next one? What does the living arrangements look like? I wish there was a magic pill for contingency, but that's not. I would say that all parties need to have an understanding that not everybody can afford to pay for 2 houses at the same time. It is very common and not an unreasonable expectations that people have to sell one house in order to buy the next.
Right.
Take the best deal that's out there. If you're sellers and you get a deal that's contingent, take it within reason if it meets some of the other things that you've got going on. Entertain that. I mean, having to sell one house is not an unreasonable expectation. I would make sure that the other house is on the market. Make sure that it's listed. Make sure that that they are serious in selling the house that they're in if they have to buy yours. Not for sale by owner, right? Serious to me means that it's on the market already. It's listed with an agent. They have given me the multiple listing numbers so that I can go and research the price point to see if it's priced well so that I can advise my sellers. I want to make sure that the house they have to sell is at a good price point, that they're not overpriced, and that they're not going to have to sit for 6 months trying to sell their house. I want to know what's going on the other side for them having to sell it.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Unless there's something else, we'll move on. Perfect. All right, we're going to go back to those 3 Ps that they spoke of earlier. You guys can mute yourself if you want to. Those 3 Ps to negotiate, they were prepare, present, and to position. Let's see what page you guys need to be on. Page 7. Negotiation is a skill. Everybody negotiates every day. You just may not realize it. It is something that can be learned. It is something that can be practiced. It's that 2-word phrase that nobody really likes to hear. It's called role play. So you can practice that. You can practice that on the phone, and it can be perfected with experience. And the best practice for negotiation is and bringing a buyer and a seller together is using the 3 Ps here. Prepare. Preparation is key. Understanding your building, understanding the neighborhood, going in with confidence, trying to ensure the smoothest negotiation process possible. And then present, where you're presenting the offer, you're either to the other listing agent, the other agent, or you're presenting it to your client, and moving into the negotiation process by presenting your offer. And then positioning it, moving both parties towards close. I'm sorry, close, not close. Moving the parties closer and closer together so that we finally come to an agreement. Sometimes that's a little bit of a give and a take, right? And we inch closer and closer together. But that's where we really need to be, where everybody can kind of come to an agreement. I would, again, call the agent, eliminate misunderstandings, make sure you're very clear on what you're asking for. Sometimes understanding the reason why. This is why we presented this offer $10,000 less, because these are comps, right? And this is kind of where we're coming from. Have that conversation. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Researching the price, especially, that's going to be your biggest, the most obvious point of negotiation. If you refer over to page 8, preparing, so learning, right? Know what your goal is, right? Our goal as agents is getting to the closing table, right? We need to have a win-win agreement between our clients, in which both the buyer and the seller are satisfied and that they're happy and pleased with the outcome of the negotiation. And remind your client that their motivation for moving forward. See, we spoke about that a little bit ago there, Julie. What's their motivation for moving or buying the house? And then everybody involved is going to be able to move forward. They're going to be able to move on. They can get past this process of selling and purchasing, and they can move on to whatever's more important to them, whatever that might be. Know your client. Have a conversation, that good consult. Sometimes, like Julie said, it's worth having a second one. Make sure you fully understand your client's goals, what they're looking for, both in a house, but in the sale, but also in the deal. Learn the areas in which they're willing to negotiate. What can they give? Is it closing costs they can give at? Is it sales price that maybe they can afford to go up a little more? Sometimes that's what it takes to find the house that they're looking for. And then also making sure your client understands what they're going to get for a particular price point. They may not understand. They don't know what we know. So they're not going to understand that what they're going to get for $200,000, right? That's going to look a lot different than $250,000. So that may be what they're the house they're looking for may be a $250,000 house, but they've got 225. So having that conversation with them. Closing costs, that's another area in which people can give a little bit. Think ahead, anticipate what the other party may be looking for. Anticipate what the other party is going to be looking for out of the negotiation. Write down, have an idea of what a counteroffer might look like. I begin to consider what counteroffers look like once I send the offer to the other agent. What are they gonna ask for? How much are they gonna go for? What are we gonna do? Is that gonna be within the realm of possibilities for my client if I get the counteroffer back? I like counteroffers. Counteroffers mean the conversation's still happening. The deal's not dead. It means everybody's willing to give a little bit, right? So I like counteroffers. And acceptance of an offer is even better, straight off the bat. What does a counteroffer look like? Set clear expectations. So prior with meeting with the other party, you need to set clear and realistic expectations with your client, right? What are you going to get for 200,000 versus what are you going to get for 225? What does that look like for them? Maybe it's a budgetary issue, but you need to make sure that they know what they're going to be getting. It is always better to under promise and over deliver. Stress the importance of moving quickly to create a sense of urgency. In this market, if your client drags their feet on making an offer, they're going to lose, especially at 250 or below 225. Anything under 180. If they drag their feet, they're going to lose. So we need to be able to create a sense of urgency with our clients, that time is of the essence. Our contracts are all built around time and time deadlines, time frames, making sure that we're moving and getting those things done, that we don't have time to drag our feet. And part of setting clear expectations with your clients, being clear that sometimes win-lose agreements, when you ask for too much, are likely to be rejected right off the bat. Sometimes that's just not understanding what the other side is looking for. Maybe it's the other agent who didn't set realistic expectations. It's not necessarily anyone's fault, but sometimes win-lose situations do happen. Try to set yourself up for win-wins and try to have that success. Be informed. Yay. Before making an offer or counter offer, it's good practice to speak with the other agents, right? So get them on the phone. You've received the offer, you've reviewed it. Sometimes you can call the other agent and say, I was just looking for a little clarity. All right. So a little clarity goes a long way with moving the process forward. Ask open-ended questions to your clients. Use active listening to find out as much as you can so that you truly understand what it is your clients are looking for, both in submitting an offer and or receiving one or selling their home. This is going to help you with the other side as well. So you know exactly what's gonna happen, or at least a much better chance. Obey the laws, right? There's some phone calls you can't make. Every state and locality has their own set of laws that regulate zoning, mortgage, qualifications, so on and so forth. Some of that is not your area of our area of expertise. That's going to fall back to your lender. Make sure you're using one that you trust and that is reputable, whomever that may be. Things like that. Stay current on local regulations. Treatment plants. Don't ask me questions about treatment plants. Treatment plants, water wells, are there guidelines based around those things? Those are the two things. Understanding what the HOAs are in the neighborhood. That could be a deal breaker for your client, right? We didn't even talk about HOAs, whether or not clients like them, don't like them, goods, the pros, the cons, what your client can and cannot do in their own front yard based on what the neighborhood allows, right? So these are all things that we need to talk about. Some people absolutely refuse to live in a neighborhood with a homeowners association. Others don't mind it quite so much. So you need to know, make sure you're looking in the right places.
Yeah, Brian, that brings up a really good question. How do you find out information about the local HOA in a neighborhood, or in more specifically in a situation like a condo or a townhouse, and all of, I mean, of course it matters and across the board, but how do you go about that?
Right. So if I were a listing agent and I had listed a condo for sale for a client, I'd have my client provide that to me. There's a contact person within the condo association that's going to have that information if it's not already on a website. Perhaps the association has a website of their own for homeowners to be able to go in and do some of their things, right? They may be able to pay their annual dues or their quarterly dues, right? But those things are oftentimes published on their website for anyone and everyone to go and look at. So I'll just pick on Beatico Creek. So Beatico Creek does have a website, Beatico Creek Homeowners Association. Just do a Google search for whatever association you're trying to find. And oftentimes you'll find the website that has them listed. Oftentimes there's property management companies that are gonna have those things. Some associations use other companies, third parties, to manage the homeowners association. So you can talk to the clients, the sellers themselves. They should be able to provide it. If I were a listing agent and had those things, I would go ahead and post them in the MLS for everyone to reach and have access to, or at least have them in a file so that if I, as a buyer's agent, I called the listing agent and said, hey, look, I'm having trouble finding the association dues. Can you send them to me? They'd be readily available and I can send those out. My first phone call, I guess my first call would be to the agent on the other side. Do you have them? Do you know where I can get them? And then secondary would be to do a Google search for the condo, for the association itself. And oftentimes you'll find them that way.
And from a buyer's perspective, how do you find out about like the HOA and what you're getting into, whether or not they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, whether it's contentious? I mean, how do you get any info like that?
I try not to make myself an expert in conversing with my clients. I do not purport to make myself the expert on the homeowners association.
Mm-hmm.
I hand it off to them and say, listen, these are the homeowners association rules and guidelines.
Okay.
You need to ensure you read them. Make sure you understand how tall your fence has to be. Make sure you understand what materials your fence has to be built out of. Right? There's some very specific, there's some specific areas most people want to know about. Can I park stuff in the backyard? Right? I got a boat and a trailer. Can I park it in the backyard? Is that a problem? And how tall does my fence have to be? Can I put up a fence at all? Right? Those are generally the primary questions people want to know. I don't make myself the expert. I will keep a copy of those, but I pass that off. Make
Okay.
it their responsibility. Please make sure you read these things because they're going to be guiding once you get into the subdivision.
Okay.
And then I will give them an opportunity to do that and then follow up with them in a day or so. Did you have an opportunity to review the homeowners association documents or the condo fee or whatever they are?
Right.
Yeah, I put it back. I put it back on them. I don't want to be the expert in that respect. Because
Okay.
if I miss something, they're going to blame me. If they miss something, that's on them.
Okay. No, that's great advice. No, that's
Yeah. And also, guys, the last bullet point on here is know your documents. Know your documents inside and out. I will ask you, has anyone actually sat and read the entire purchase agreement? So, right, I can see some of you have, many of you have not. Familiarize yourself with what the document says. Make sure that you are the expert when it comes to filling out those documents, whether or not it be the listing agreement, understanding what it says, the purchase agreement, knowing what the blanks mean. What does it really mean to give with the last page, one of the last fields that you fill out on the purchase agreement? I'm dealing with it now. It's 28 days. It has to do with clearing up a title, like title, clouds on a title. You know, what's a reasonable expectation of putting that? What is the effects of putting 28 days versus 12 days or 14 days? How much is a reasonable expectation in inspection period? What should you be putting in there? How much time do you need for the intent to proceed form, which is on page 2 or 3, has to deal with your lender. How quickly are they going to get an application submitted? So those are all things based on how busy everybody is that you guys need to be familiar with and what it means and how it can impact your client one way or the other, no matter what side of the deal that you're on. So, questions? Perfect. All right. Learning, knowing your client, understanding what your client's needs are. Understanding that the right questions to ask is important to the negotiation process, right? Closed-ended questions versus open-ended questions. Asking questions allows you to establish and uncover objectives. It also makes you the expert once you have all the pieces to the puzzle. Uncover objectives and the goals of your clients or of the buying and listing agent. It also kind of sets the tone. Through your asking of questions, you gain more information. As you gain information, you're going to strengthen your ability to negotiate and increase your chances of having success in a win-win situation, right? So some of the benefits of asking questions. You get the points in which you need to negotiate on. Maybe they have to have those closing costs, right? Provides insight on where you and your client are going to have leverage. You know, what can you agree to give on? What's not quite so important? You may ask for $5,000 in closing, but you only need $2,000. It allows you to negotiate a little bit and feel and present at least the view or the perception of giving, right? Or offering a little bit something up. Setting clear expectations, getting to know what your clients and their goals are. You're also going to learn that it's going to help make win-win negotiations for both parties, just asking those questions. At a basic level, there's two types of questions, obviously. Open-ended questions, closed-ended. You know, there are good times to ask both open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Definitely, I would say ask those open-ended questions up front. The more information that they give you, the better your search is going to be, the better, more prepared that you're going to be to address concerns and questions for your clients. They also have an unlimited response, right? So one of the questions, what additional information should I know? Well, that could be really anything. And your clients are going to answer that. They're just going to ramble. Just take notes, mental notes, take it on paper, scratch it out. I have chicken scratch on paper when it's all over the place. I just kind of write it everywhere just and I'm able to go back and look at that chicken scratch and go, oh, I know what he was talking about, right? And you can do the same thing. So whatever works for you. What's important about closing in 30 days? That might be that they may have a legitimate reason for doing that, or they just may not know that they may need more time, right? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about selling your house so fast that you haven't found one yet? How do you feel about your house sitting on the market for 6 months because you've overpriced it? Right? These are all questions that are going to have unlimited answers. Closed-ended questions, they're going to be generally yes or no or single word. You know, do you have to sell your house by a certain date? Yes, I need to sell it in 30 days because, and they're oftentimes going to go into that. Do you have any other offers? Right? So you can ask the other agent for that. They're not obligated to answer that question, by the way. Especially on the listing side, they're not obligated to answer whether or not they have other offers. In fact, they have to have the permission of their client in order to share that. And what's the bottom line price? What is the absolute minimum that your seller is either willing to present or that they're going to offer? And it might, so when is it going to be beneficial to use open-ended questions over closed-ended questions? I will unmute you in case anyone has anything to say. Anyone? How about, do you have to sell your house in order to buy the next one? Right? A little closed-ended, yet very important question, I would think.
I think,
And then piggybacking off of that, yes.
I was just gonna say, I think the open-ended questions are really good at the beginning, at the outset. So you
Without
get
a
as
doubt.
much detail and and you're not driving the conversation. You're letting them tell you what they need to tell you. And then when you get closer to the time of actually needing to get your information that you need to check your boxes for, it's time to kind of get those closed-ended questions done. But at the initial outset, just kind of let them talk and build that relationship.
Yes, absolutely. In that first consult that you have with your buyers or sellers, what's important about, why are you selling your home? And then stop talking, right? It's going to be a little awkward, but they're going to be forced to talk and give you some information. Why do you need to, what's important about your next home? What needs to be, what are deal breakers in the next home that you're looking to purchase? You know, things of that, but absolutely agree. Those closed, open-ended questions in the beginning, anything that allows your client to talk in the beginning and just have a rambling of information that they're going to spew out is absolutely critical. You can get more specific in your questions when you have found 2 houses or 3 houses that they absolutely love and they know they want to put an offer in on one of them. And then you begin to ask those much more detailed questions. It's also going to help you fill out your purchase agreement. Do you have to buy? Do you have to sell in order to buy? How quickly can your lender get you to an approval? How much time do they need? What does your lending look like? You know, all very specific questions, but they're all very, is it important that you have a fence in the backyard? That's pretty much a yes or no answer, right? Yes, I have dogs. I need a fence in the backyard. So those are some very specific things. Absolutely. A very simple script. I don't know if you guys use scripts. I like scripts. You can use the ones that Keller Williams provided. Come up with your own, use them on a regular basis. But here's a simple script that can be used to help you get ahead and to get the information that you need to have a successful win-win negotiation. What would happen if, right? Very, very simple. And then you fill in the blanks, right? What would happen if you don't sell your house on time? What would happen if you don't get the offer you're looking for, right? Very, very easy, but it also opens up the doorway for conversation. And then getting to their very specific, to your clients. Why is this important to you? So that's a great question for both sellers and for buyers. Why is that important to you? And you'll be surprised of how much information you can actually gain from your client, whatever those responses are, but it's going to give you a lot more insight. Anybody want to volunteer for a role play? We're having some really good conversation. So I don't know that the role play is absolutely necessary, yet role playing these questions out, if not in this situation, but definitely if you are uncomfortable or don't feel like you're getting the information that you need, find a role play partner that you can sit and jot down a few key questions that are going to open the door of conversation with your client, so that you can get the most information that you're looking for and what you need to have in order to be successful with them. So role play is vital. If you're not doing that, you should be with someone. I'll be glad to help you if you need it, and I'll offer myself as a role play partner. Not only is that going to help you, but it also helps me. And I told you in the beginning that I do not purport to know it all. So I'm always willing to learn and grow. Any questions about these two short scripts or how they might affect what you're looking for? Perfect. There. Turn to page 9, if you would, in your guide. Again, this is another activity, but you guys are all online. I would ask that you guys take the opportunity to read the scenario, record down any kind of clarifying questions and ahas that you might have. And then we're going to discuss what some of those clarifying questions may be. So if you guys would do that, page 9, read the scenario, and then circle and underline the key areas in which you feel like more information or uncertainty, make what you need to know more about, and then write down 3 specific questions. Now, I don't have this scenario, so you guys are going to have to help me out there. And again, I'm going to unmute everyone. Done.
Somehow I'm missing page 9.
You're missing page 9?
Yeah, I guess I'll go back and pull it up.
Okay.
Okay, I have page 9. Do you need me to read the scenario?
How about let's do that for those that may not have it. Yes, please.
Okay, so the scenario is you are representing a single buyer. Your client is renting her property, her present property. Like any first-time buyer, she is looking to you to guide her through the process. The asking price for the home she really loves is $175,000. The house appears to have evidence of a roof leak. Is listed as is and is a number, I'm sorry, okay, so it's listed as is and is correctly priced. Your client would like to keep her payments as low as possible since she has a number of student loans to pay off. She wants to write an offer for $155,000. There has been quite a bit of activity on the listing. That's it.
Okay. Clarifying questions. Any ideas?
Is this her house that she really wants?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Is this, that would be my question to her. Is this the house
Yeah.
you really want?
And why?
Because she's bidding a little bit low, and if there's been plenty of activity, definitely not going to get it.
So we make a little presumption that maybe there's been activity on the house, and maybe it hasn't been listed that long, right? Maybe it's still very early or within the first 2 weeks. The scenario said that it was priced correctly, but there's evidence of a roof leak. Now, does price correctly mean that it was priced with the roof leak in mind? Or was it priced? Right? So I don't think it's very clear, right? So that would be one of the questions that we could actually ask the listing agent that, right? Is it the price of the house reflective of an active roof leak?
Maybe we
Would
could
that would
ask.
help.
Maybe we could ask the seller if the house has a home warranty that could cover replacement of the roof.
Possibly. Maybe the roof is relatively new and it's still under some sort of warranty by the construction company. So that would be something else that would be advantageous for us to know on the buyer side. You know, asking the buyer, what is it about this house that makes it your favorite? right? Understanding their motivation for this particular house, right? What is the possibility of you paying for the repair? And then we offer less, right? And we stay with our asking price of 155. All houses are sold as is. What they intended, I believe, was that they weren't willing to make any repairs. That's very different. Every residential property that I've ever dealt with has always been, you buy the house as is. That's always the case. Your clarifying question can be, are they selling the house as is, or are they unwilling to make repairs? That's two totally different things. They may be willing to make repairs. You just need to ask to make sure that there's some clarity around that particular statement. Right? See the difference? What happens if you submit the offer and the seller counters with a full price offer and they're going to fix the roof?
I guess you asked your client, could she go up to the full price and what her loan is for?
Right, because a repair of a roof is going to be cash out of pocket versus financing it through the mortgage company, right? If they're going to be willing to do that, the seller will do that, and they're willing to go up because basically she's financing the roof, assuming it's, $20,000 in repairs, right? That would be a quite a significant repair, but we don't know what that looks like. What if they counter with no repairs at all? Right? That was something to ask your clients. What happens if we submit this offer and then they counter and they're not going to do any repairs? What can we do? How will we approach that? Are you prepared for an offer that comes back, right? That looks like that. Any
Well,
other clarifying?
If they take her 155 offer, they accept it, but they won't do any repairs. She just needs to get somebody up there to repair that roof.
Right. Yeah. If
That's
the
a good
house is,
deal.
yeah, it very well could be. At 175, if that's what priced correctly, and if they take the 155, perhaps she knows somebody that can do that work. Perhaps it's not a total roof replacement. Maybe it's just a patch job. But I think there's some other questions we would want to make sure that we ask, but definitely getting clarity and understanding on where everyone is, where your client is, from the standpoint of how to approach that and what they're willing to do and or accept. At least that keeps the conversation going, but it also provides you some clarity in what your client is willing to do based on the circumstances. And a lot of that will have to do with how much they love the house or not, right? So very good, guys. Very good questions. All right, page 10, if you've got it. Presenting the offer. Call the other agent. Let them know that you've submitted an offer. If your offer is a little unusual, you may take that opportunity to clarify what and why and where your client is coming from. So if the pricing is low, or they're asking for a lot of money up front in closing costs, clarity is power. If the other side understands where your buyer is coming from, it's going to be easier to accept and understand. They won't get angry or upset, and perhaps they'll be able to just negotiate it through. So pay attention to nonverbal cues. You need to read between the lines sometimes about what's going on both sides, with all parties involved. Keep quiet. Let the other side do what it needs to do. They need to have conversations among themselves. Maybe they need to weigh their options, right? So just kind of sit back and let the process work. You've given them a time frame. When it gets within an hour of the time frame of the expiration of the offer, I will oftentimes call at that point, but not beforehand. So I generally try to give 24 hours. when I present an offer. On 23 hours, I'm picking up the phone and saying, I'm just wondering if you've got any questions. Are there any concerns? Most of the times they're just preparing the paperwork. But try not to bother the other agent too much. Let that process work. Listen carefully to what's important to the other party. You're going to be able to get some cues from your conversation with the agent on what's important, what the other side is looking for. It may give you a cue as to what the counteroffer may look like. Stay calm. From our standpoint and as agents, this is a business transaction, right? And whether or not we know the clients or not, or we're personally attached or not, we know that sometimes they don't always work out. We also know that sometimes it just takes a little time to get to that win-win situation, that win-win scenario. So stay calm. Your clients are going to pick up on that as well. If you are nervous and anxious about the offer or whatever else is going on, your clients are going to pick up on that. They're going to read your body language and your cues, and then they're going to become anxious as well. If you stay strong and confident in the offer that you've prepared because you've advised them well, then you're not going to have anything to worry about. It may get countered, it may get accepted. You just don't know until it comes back. So let's not put the cart before the horse. Stay calm and relaxed. Focused on your client. That's who you work for, right? Focus on what your client needs, what the customer's needs are. Give your offer the best chance. You know, sometimes it's not always in the best interest of anybody involved to do a lowball offer. Sometimes you need to have a little more reasoned approach on what gets presented. And but again, you work for your client, but give the best offer that you can, a good solid offer. You may know that the other side is overpriced. If it's a listing that if you're a buyer's agent and you're doing that and you're submitting an offer, and you've got a good solid offer, you've talked to your client about that. Everybody understands where you're coming from, but give your office the best chance and just let the process work. Do you guys have any other details that are in your participant guide along with any of that? Questions or concerns? Beautiful. All right. Page 11 in your participant guide. What's on the participant guide for the information about positioning? Is it the same thing? There we are. I'm on the right page now. Is this the same thing you guys see? So you've got a client who apparently wants to close, and the buyer wants to close in 60 days. The seller wants to close in 30 days. You know, asking what and how could be advantageous to both sides. It says here on the screen, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're requesting a 30-day closing. What is important about closing in 30 days, right? Understanding what the other side's needs are. Sometimes they need to get into a home really quickly. Sometimes they need to get out of a home really quickly. Just not knowing. Understanding provides some clarity. And then if your client becomes defensive, right, you want to diffuse that. You know, you need to let them know, try to share and convey that your goal is to know what and why it's important. So the more you understand about your own client, you're able to share some insight to the other side, right? And that's going to kind of help diffuse the situation if anybody gets defensive or gets upset. And then it opens up an opportunity to figure out what really works. How quickly can it actually be done? Is there any give or take in that closing period? You know, when you I have had situations where I've had to walk away from a deal, you know, and something like this could be a reason why someone walks away. For instance, I had a situation where I was representing a buyer, a young lady, single mom, one child. We found a home, but we couldn't quite come together on some of the inspection issues, and that has actually turned out to be a roof. I advised them to walk away. Right, we walked away from the deal at first. It just wasn't feasible for her to be able to do it on her own financially, and the roof itself was showing some pretty significant signs of distress, and so it really needed to be addressed. A week later, with this particular situation, the seller came back to us, and they were willing to make some adjustments to their initial stance, and we were actually able to move the deal forward. Does anyone else have any situations where they've had to advise their client to simply walk away? Well, you know your clients better than anyone else is going to give them the best advice that you can. Sometimes that is their option, is to walk away. Whether or not it's the seller or the buyer, sometimes it's just best to walk away from a deal, especially if you get the sense that there's not going to be a meeting in the middle. Sometimes for your seller, it's just the offer price. And if they've got to have a bottom line, and they're not getting that, for them, it may just make sense to walk away. And it does happen. It can be a little disheartening to your client, yet it's not the end of the world. And sometimes it's just not meant to be. Sometimes, as in my situation with the roof, clients will come back. They will call you and say, hey, look, we're in maybe they're in a situation where they can't afford to lose it, and so they reconsider, and they can get the process moving again. Questions? Beautiful. Again, this is an opportunity for you guys to work together. We're all on Zoom, so we'll do that as a group. Page 12 in your participant guide. There's going to be some instructions on your guide at the top of the page, so you guys can kind of read through that. You should be working with a partner. However, we'll work as a group. Read the instructions on page 12, pick a partner, can't do that. And then what we need to do is be prepared to talk about some of the strategies. And I'd really like to kind of get into y'all's some experiences that you may have had with some of your deals and some of your interactions with clients. And then we can just have a conversation about that. You guys take a few minutes and read that. All right. Anyone willing to kind of give us an overview of what that looks like, what that scenario is? I'm having trouble unmuting you, some of you.
Okay, so they want to make an offer 10,000 below asking,
Okay.
and the buyer wants the appliances, but the seller wants to give the appliances to their daughter. So what about if the buyer, instead of keeping the, asking for the appliances, asks for money toward closing?
Yeah, I love that. It's a great alternative. So long as it's allowed by the lender. Some lenders, some lending only provides you with an opportunity to get so much money, right? So if they need money towards closing costs, and they can get that, but there's still room for some of that, that's a great alternative to go up a little bit. Or maybe they haven't asked for any at all. Yeah, I like that. What else? Anything else? Any other options? There's always adjusting the sales price, right? That's always an option. That one's easy to address. It doesn't always help your clients get the cash that they need up front though, right? Because if they are, I'll say cash poor, but they need the cash, adjusting the sales price doesn't give them that cash. Really the only thing that does that is kind of getting them some closing cost or something that helps them save a little bit of money in that respect. Especially if they need to use that for other things. There's also the opportunity of holding some things if it comes to repairs or something, holding money in escrow, having the title company hold it. So if they don't want to give cash directly to the buyer, then the seller can say, okay, we'll pay for that out of our proceeds, but we're going to put it in escrow and ask the title company to hold it. And then you have to have the work done as the buyer and then show proof that you had the work done before you get any disbursement. So there's always that option. And sometimes that may be something that's more attractive to your lender because it may not get you in hot water. I would say have a conversation with your lender before completing and finishing that inspection response when it comes to that. Because there's certain limits within different types of lending. You can only get so much money back. Anything else? Love it. Okay, good deal. All right, your counter options, right? Your counter topics. Let's take a look at what that entails. All right, page 13. Again, we should be with a partner, read each tactic and the accompanying action. What can be a counter tactic? How else can we approach those things that you can use in those situations? And then record, just write it down for yourself in your guide. Anyone want to read the first one? We can discuss it. Jessica, you still with us?
I'm still here. I'm at work right now.
Oh, okay. Okay, I understand. I didn't know if you had the opportunity to read it to us, the situation.
No, I.
Okay. No worries.
I'll
Good
do
deal.
it.
Thank you, sir.
Nibbling. Once your client has agreed upon one major concession, the other party will start nibbling for additional smaller concessions. That's the action. It's the counter tactic. Just tell them
So
no.
nibbling. Right? It's that
You
never
got the big concession already.
Yeah, it's that never ending game. Once they begin to ask for a little bit of stuff, they continue to want they want to continue to get more, right?
Right.
They just continue to ask and continue to ask, right? Always asking for another concession. What's the good guy, bad guy? So the good guy, bad guy is, we're going to call them out on it, right? We're going to call them out on their game. If it continues, then we're going to attribute what the bad guy says to the good guy, since they're in a tag team anyway. It's gonna probably diffuse the situation a little bit. So kind of get you around that. And then hot potato, right? Hot potato, we're just gonna test the validity of a claim. Find out what the problems really are. And has the party really actually tried to exhaust any possible solutions? You know, and that could go back to a lending issue, right? Have they really explored all the different lending options that gets them what they need? You know, that's one of the first things that I think of. What works best for your client? What's that alternative? I had a client who had a home in Massachusetts, was buying a home down here. At first, indicated that they needed to sell the other home in Massachusetts before buying, right? Yet, what we did was we changed the lending. So then they didn't have to put down quite so much money, and she was able to afford both homes at the same time. Now, fortunately, so what we did was we exhausted possibilities, right? You do the same thing when you have negotiations on your inspection items. You exhaust possibilities. Sometimes it's a concession thing. Sometimes it's a home warranty thing, right? What else is there? What else can be done? So our jobs are kind of there to exhaust all the possibilities. On page 13, you should have some counter tactics there. See if they kind of align. See if there's anything there that you guys have aligned that matches up with any of those three different tactics there. So I didn't know what scenarios you guys may have that you'd be able to kind of match up. All right. Three piece. Too far. There, it's a one shot. All right, page 14 of your guide. This is an activity in which you get to kind of put those three P's, the prepare, present, and position, into action using negotiation skills that we've discussed today. And their goal is to actually do a role play with a win-win to get to a win-win situation. What's been covered? We've talked about price and terms. We have talked about prepare, present, and position yourself. And we've also talked about some of the counter tactics, kind of how that gets played out through the negotiation process. Again, with partners, we'll just do this as a group. Do a listing agent side and a buyer agent side. Anybody want to, you guys want to volunteer to do a role play? Even with each other, since you guys have the, you guys have that scenario there in front of. Here we are. Not sure what happened.
Happened.
I'm not sure. Did we get everybody back? All right, where is everybody? Let's see. Can everyone hear me?
I
We can hear you.
Whoa,
Okay, good.
Mario.
I got a lot of echo here. And
Looks like it might happen with something with your screen.
yeah, I just changed that. And I need to go to, I don't want full screen. I want, that is not what I want. I'm just going to minimize that. Then I need to go to, how do I get this to go big?
So does anybody else feel like maybe the listing agent is just trying to get them to bring their offer up? Not necessarily that their offer is too low.
The listing agent, I think, in my opinion, is at times trying to do what they want to keep the listing, right?
Right.
Listing agents want the listing, and they're hoping to be able to either get a buyer that's going to come in at the price that they've priced it at, or at some point in the future talk their seller into reducing the price to a point where it's actually going to sell. Right?
Right.
Anybody here generally deal with sellers as the majority of their business?
I've sold one property.
Okay, great. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Did you have the buyer or the seller?
Oh, well, I listed one property and I also, on a separate transaction, had a buyer. So I've
Awesome.
done both sides of the coin.
Okay, that's fantastic. So what was your take on the listing side?
Well, of course,
I mean,
you know,
how did you feel that you were representing them?
you want to get your client like the most, of course, and you want to do right by your client. And I see that's what the listing agent in this scenario is trying to do. She didn't, or he didn't say that your offer is the lowest one. The listing
Right.
agent just said your offer is pretty low, trying to get them to bring it up.
Perhaps.
It's kind of tricky in words.
You have to take it with a grain of salt. You know, they represent, the listing agents are going to represent their buyers. I mean, represent their sellers, of course. I would say make sure that you understand that house and that neighborhood as much as possible.
Right.
Know if you're submitting a solid offer, and whether or not your client feels like it's overpriced or not. I mean, if the buyer feels like it's overpriced, you're not going to convince them to spend more money on it than they want. Try to study the neighborhood, have some comparables before you even submit the offer from the buyer standpoint. That's what I try to do. Make sure I have a good understanding of what should be a nice solid offer. I mean, from the listing side, you are trying to do what's right for the client. I would say try to get it sold as fast as possible. Make sure that you're listing it where it needs to be. Make sure that you have shared what the numbers are already. Make sure you've got some good comps, and make sure that you're setting good expectations to your sellers so that they know exactly what homes that look like theirs in their neighborhood are selling for. Just setting realistic expectations.
Right.
Let's see. Let's get back to is anyone here willing to do a role play with each other? I don't have the scenario in front of me. Come on, guys.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize you weren't
close.
reading what I was reading.
I'm sorry?
I didn't realize you weren't reading the scenario that I was reading.
No, I don't have it. I don't have the participant guide in front of me. I just have the facilitator guide. If this was all done in person, you guys would have paired up and done it yourselves and have conversations among yourself about what that looks like. And then also kind of what the role play looks like. And then as a group, we would discuss it. But since our Ignite is being held through Zoom today, we don't have the luxury of being able to pair up. So a lot of our activities have just been group discussion and group activities today. So anybody want to role play with me? Give me the scenario and we can role play it. It's a quiet room. All right. That's okay. It happens. But I would tell you, you know, just make sure that you understand kind of where both parties are coming from, so that you can kind of present their case to the other side. So that
Brian,
can
do you want
discuss
me to read the scenario to you since I already was talking to you about it, assuming you knew what I was reading?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so the buyer agent role, it says your client has found the house they love and it's in the neighborhood they want. It is at the top of their price range and does need some work updating the kitchen and master bedroom. Your client makes an offer on the property and the seller's agent says, I must warn you that we've gotten several offers and your offer is pretty low. And then on the listing agent side, it says your sellers need to move within 45 days due to a job transfer. You feel that you have priced the house competitively. You are aware the house needs updating, but the sellers don't see the need because the house was just fine for them. There have been multiple offers. The other offers are still standing, but the timing may not work for the seller. And the latest offer is lower than the asking price. You have let the buyer's agent know, quote, I must warn you that we have gotten several offers and your offer is pretty low. So
what
she's
is
trying
your
to get them
take?
to bring their offer up,
Yes.
but
Yes, she is.
without saying that the other offers they have on the table aren't going to close in time for them.
Right. So she's kind of giving away a little bit that timing is an issue, right? So that kind of goes back to what we spoke of early on, was that sometimes it's not always about price. Sometimes it's about the ability to when you can close. So I'd really like to know more about what your thoughts are on that.
Well, if they like it or not, they may have to take the one that's going to close in time for them, to be honest.
That's true. You know, because sometimes the sellers just may be in a crunch where they may not be able to move forward without getting their deal, or something else that's going to fall apart for them. So you may actually force their hand.
Listing
they can
agent
always
did the right thing for her client by saying, you know, we do have other offers and yours is kind of low. I mean, that was the right thing, trying to get them to bring that up without giving away too much information. But
assuming they had the permission to share that information. Yes, I agree. And I would want to.
the only thing that she said was, I must warn you that we've gotten several offers and your offer is pretty low. So she didn't say how much the other offers were. She didn't say that they were on a different time constraint. So she didn't give out too much.
Right, not too much. And a lot of agents will volunteer that information if they've gotten other offers, or if they're entertaining other offers. You do need to have your client's permission on whether or not you can share that information, though, even if it's just, yes, we have more than one offer on the table. So make sure that you have that conversation with them. I think she is trying to do what's best for her client and trying to pull the sales price up. What I would say is have a conversation have the listing agent have a conversation with the buyer's agent to see if there's any room for the price point, especially with something that's going to close a little sooner. That may help them out based on the scenario. Anyone else?
I guess at some point, the listing agent's going to have to talk to their client about what that price point is. I mean, it would seem, but I guess as the buyer's agent, you have to go back to them and say, can you come up with a little bit better offer? And maybe that would work. So I can see it being kind of a conversation between the agent as well to reach that sweet spot.
Absolutely. And it kind of comes back to motivation, you know, what's motivating them in the first place, and kind of relying on that to get the buyers to submit a slightly stronger offer if they're able to, even if it's, you know, even if it does need a little bit of work, right? But if they just love the house or they love the neighborhood, sometimes you have to pay a little bit more for that to get their satisfaction. right? To get what it is that they like out of the deal. Sometimes it's emotional or other things, right? So sometimes you've got to pay a little bit more, especially if it's a hot property, something with multiple offers. It's got to be as long as you possibly can submit. And even still, you can still submit the strongest offer that you can, and sometimes it's still just not good enough. And it does not always come down to price. Sometimes it comes down to lending and closing and so on and so forth. But I would say prepare your client for that conversation, whether or not it's the listing side or the buyer side. Prepare them for that conversation, what that looks like for you and your client. Present the best offer that you can, the strongest offer that you can, based on how hot the properties are, the market reports, right? Is it going to go fast? Has it been sitting on a market for a year, right? 300 days already. So present the offer based on the information that you know, and then position yourself to have a counteroffer prepared. Position yourself to have a conversation with your client based on what you get and the reaction you get from the other side of the table. I don't like surprises, right? Surprises are not fun for me. They're not fun for clients. So the more conversations that you can have as far as what possibilities could be, Mr. Buyer, we submitted this offer. This is what they could come back and ask for. It could be this. It could be this. They want to give us money. And what I generally do is just run down those 4 options that's on the inspection response. They could accept it the way that we have presented it, and they could reject it completely. They can offer to give us money, or they may offer to do items 1, 3, and 5, but not numbers 2, 4, and 6. Those preparations and those conversations position you to have a better, reasonable conversation with your client on either side, right? Because as a seller, you can go, look, this is some of the things that they could ask for, because even with my own eyes, I've noticed this and I've noticed that, and who knows what the AC looks like. We don't know. But from a seller standpoint, you can still prepare your client for, I know that they're sending us an offer. We just got it, right? This is what it looks like. Presenting a counteroffer, perhaps. You getting mentally prepared to present the offer to your client, right? Talking over the offer and the what's and the whys and how that affects the sellers. And then positioning yourself. Maybe you need to position yourself to commit to turn in a counteroffer. Maybe you need to position yourself to just have a different conversation with the buyer's agent to let you know where you are at in the situation. And that's going to kind of lead into this other part of counter tactics, right? We just kind of discussed that in this conversation. So, no matter what part of the table that you're on, whether or not you're listing or the seller, you're still going to prepare in some form or fashion. You're still going to present an offer in some form or fashion. And you're still going to position yourself to either have an accepted contract, a rejected contract altogether, or something that got countered. So everybody's going to be in some sort of position, and then being prepared to move on from that. Let's see. And recapping. Sorry, I know this isn't full view. If I knew how to do that, I would. Nope. Okay. That doesn't do it either. Sorry. So on page 15 of your guide, the goal of our time here together is to try to get people to think a little bit, to get us all to think, feel, and act, and use what you've learned through all the sessions of Ignite to ignite your passion in what you're doing and to help us as agents to achieve our why. If you would, please take a moment and write down some of your ahas for any of the moments and for any of the categories of think, feel, and act, those that are listed there above. And then any volunteers that you guys, if anyone would volunteer. Admit. So one of those was, how has your thinking changed? What ideas or mindsets were new? Anybody have a different way of being able to kind of think through something, or maybe it's something that you haven't thought of before on how to handle or address or approach?
I never thought about going back and putting the money with the title company for repairs. I had never heard of that. And being able to use that as a way of mitigating that expense for the homeowner, especially the first time buyer that really needs that cash to do the repairs. And that's a great tool. And I never thought of that or even knew it existed, to be honest. So that's wonderful.
Just make sure you ask some good questions about that, both to your buyer, to seller, lender. Make sure that's something that everybody's going to be in tune with. You know, sometimes sellers, sometimes buyers, when they get money, they don't always fix the things that they're going to say they're going to fix, right? And sometimes those problems just get handed off to the next buyer and the one after that and the one after that. If you really want to ensure that they're going to do what they say they're going to do or what they asking for the money for, that's a great way to make sure that that happens. Otherwise, you can write up an amendment that says if you don't get this fixed and or addressed, the seller gets that money back, right? So it is motivation to get those things done. You know, you have to have the roof replaced in 6 weeks, or the money held in escrow will revert back to the seller. Great. Fixed a roof or don't fix the roof, that's fine. That's what the money is for. We're willing to give that to you, but you have to go and fix the roof. If you don't fix the roof or provide proof that it was done, then the seller's going to get that money back. So it's a great tool. It's a great tool, especially if you have sellers who are a little apprehensive about giving money and not knowing what they're going to do with it. So I love that. Is there anything that you feel differently about? Was there anything that was particularly meaningful that you may have gotten? I know it was a lot of conversations today, and you didn't have the opportunity to speak face to face with each other as other agents. Yet you may still feel a little bit differently about in one thing or another. Is there anything that kind of jumps out? And if not, that's okay. What about any behaviors? Are there any behaviors there? How will your behaviors be different going forward? What actions will you take going forward? One of the things that jumped out for me whenever I got started was I learned a long time ago that picking up the phone and calling versus a text message or an email was the best way to get some clarity, to get some information. Texting can be misunderstood. Emails sometimes take too long. You cannot read a person's inflection. Sometimes you kind of need to get to know the agent a little bit, so that you know how to move forward and best represent your client. I've worked with agents who were not quite as giving or didn't quite provide information as easily as others have, and that's okay. You just need to kind of know that up front, and you're going to figure that out best by, in my opinion, picking up the phone and making a phone call and calling and having a conversation. So that was one of the things that I started doing early on, just calling the agent, figuring out where everybody's at so you can make good decisions.
The one thing I did write down was to make sure that I include all the appliances, because I didn't really think about putting the appliances all down. They would take them. I never thought about putting bathroom mirror down either, but
Right. Yeah, and that was just a one-off type of situation. But one of the things that I always go back that I heard Chris Morris say a lot was, if it's not, it doesn't matter if it's listed in the multiple listing service. It doesn't matter if it says in the multiple listing service that, the buyer gets the refrigerator, the buyer gets the stove, the buyer get whatever. If it's not in the contract, it does not exist. It is not real until it is in the contract. So I made it a habit to list the appliances. All these appliances stay, it's in the contract, it's part of the agreement, this is staying. Most recently, I put the lawnmower. I put 0 turn lawnmower in the contract itself. So regardless of what the multiple listing service says, protect your client, protect your seller. There's certain things they want to exclude, right? As a seller, maybe it's that piece of furniture that somebody said they liked, or whatever the case is. Make it very, very clear. Use those blanks to include and or exclude. I think it's on the very first page of your contract. Use those blanks to your advantage. Put it in there, regardless of what the multiple listing says, because that's not binding. That's not a contract. Put it in there. Make sure that it's very, very clear. Use that tool. So I really appreciate y'all's involvement in activities today. Some daily, let me move on. Oh, scroll, here we go. There. Some daily success habits. There are a few things that may help you guys out if you're not already doing them. Script practice, whatever scripting that you're using, find somebody that you feel comfortable with, that you can talk to, speak with, practice those things. You don't want to practice on a real live phone call with a potential client that you've never spoken with before. You want to practice in a safe place with someone who is going to help coach you and guide you through a little difficult area in your conversation. So I encourage you to practice. Make sure you're doing your lead gen, right? Whatever that looks like for you. 3 hours. If you can give 3 hours in the morning, that is fantastic. Now, I have not read the entire MREA book yet. I'm pretty confident that it does say that you need to schedule and block out 3 hours of lead gen time, whether or not that's texting or by emails, by phone, calling your sphere of influence, whatever that looks like for you. Some sort of lead generation needs to be happening. Update your contacts. Make sure you notate your follow-ups. Command is great for that. You can set tasks for future things. Set your reminders, and then log into Command every day. And then if there's any kind of contract practice, which is kind of optional, which you can do, discuss bring a real life contract with you and have a conversation with another agent, somebody that's that you feel safe and comfortable with, and talk about what that looks like. What if I presented this offer to you? What would be some of the counter offers we might get? And going back to the forms and the paperwork, what does it mean if I only put this much time in this blank, right? What if I only ask for 7 days? What if I can get 3 weeks, right? That's great for buyers, not so much for sellers. And how it affects both sides. Make sure you get some understanding on what that looked like, what the contracts themselves, and the addendums, what some of the addendums mean. So if you're not doing those things, you definitely should be. They're going to help you in your business. I know it continues to help in mine, and my business continues to grow year over year. And I just started 4 years ago in 2017. So some standards, some goals to kind of make sure that you are doing what needs to happen and make sure that your goal and your career continues to take off. Make sure that you're adding contacts to your database. Set a goal for yourself every week. 10 contacts added. Make sure that you should be having 10 conversations a day. Conversations can be over the phone, an interactive conversation through text, an interactive conversation through email, meaning you're actually getting responses. You're actually having a conversation of, I do real estate, do you need some? Type of conversations. It can be in person. Talk to the checkout lady, right? We all go to stores. They need to buy a house too, right? So talk to the person behind the counter. You're captive for 3 minutes anyway, while your stuff's being checked out. It's a great, easy conversation to have. And be prepared with a business card. Handwritten notes go a very long way, especially with conversations that you may have had with clients, past clients, potential clients. Thank you for your conversation. Thank you for your time. I look forward to next time. Those things go a long way, and I will tell you, they will set you apart from probably 90 to 95% of your competition, which are other agents. 10 previews per week. I would say that it would be great if you could do those in person. However, open houses have been a little slum here lately, just with the COVID stuff. But if you can drop in on an open house or two periodically, or maybe you can preview some homes online, I say do that. Make sure you know what houses in your price point that you're working with, what they look like. Make sure you understand kind of what the neighborhoods are doing in the areas that you work. So you have a very good idea and you can speak confidently to what's going on in those areas and where they're at. Collecting name, email, phone number will help improve your database score as well in Command. Some of you have, myself included, have clients that are missing or leads that are missing some of that information, and your database is in the red, right? What we really want to do is try to get that up into the blue and or to the green. If you get their name, email address, their mailing address, and a phone number, those 4 items, your database score will go above 80, right? And so those are all the main methods of conversation, of interaction. If you at least have a phone number and email, your database score gets to be around 60%, right? Which is still good and is actually better than almost all the agents in Keller Williams. But you do want to work on trying to get those. I will share with you guys, and this is our little secret, that there is a great smart plan that's built into Command. It's free, that will help you fill in the blanks for some of that information that you're missing. It's called the My Missing Phone Number or My Missing Email, right? And it's on one of the first 2 pages or so of the smart plans. Go and find that. It's really easy to set up. It will automatically put smart plan. It is a one-touch smart plan. It only does the one touch. If you have a client's phone number and you are missing the email, it reads something like this. Hey, John, I was going to email you earlier today, yet I realized I don't have your email address. I would love to send you information on your neighborhood. Please let me know what neighborhood it is, and I'll send you monthly updates, right? They are likely to respond by text message, because that's how that one's going to go out, with their email address. It's super easy. I've had tremendous luck in getting people to respond. If they have an email address but no phone number, it's a similar conversation. It's a similar smart plan. It says a lot of the same things, but it goes out through email. Hey, John, I was going to call you earlier today and touch base with you, yet I realized I don't have your phone number. Can you give me your phone number? This is going to help you. One, it starts a conversation with your clients and or your leads, right? Then you can continue that conversation. It doesn't have to end right there. How have you been? Whatever, right? Have that conversation. That's a contact for one. right? 2, it does improve your database score, right? And 3, you're getting more information on your clients. You're getting alternative ways to reaching out to them. And there's other methods in which you can make contact and have conversations, and other smart plans that are going to come into play. That's going to continue to help with your touches and continue to grow your business. So I wanted to share those 2 things with you. I personally have had a lot of success in people reaching back to me and saying, yeah, it's great to hear from you. I haven't heard from you in whatever, right? It's been a while. Here's my phone number. Oh, by the way, I'm looking in this, right? I had someone that I haven't spoken to since early this year, whether by text or email, that said something very similar to that. Oh, by the way, I'm looking in Kenner or Laplace or Hammond. I'd love to have some information. It's like, awesome, I can do that, right? So that's just potential business. So moving on from that. Scripts. Why are scripts important, right? Scripts. Anybody have a definition of scripts? Definition of scripts is just a written response to a question. That's all it is, right? It's just an automated something that you say in response to something else. It can be totally natural. It could be a script or verbiage or whatever it is you've come up with that helps you break the ice, that you use on all your clients. It doesn't have to be fake. Some scripts sound fake. Make it your own. Make it your script, right? Make sure it's something that can apply to 90% of your clients or leads that you're getting or conversations that you're having, right? So I'm going to run through this list. You may or may not have it on your screen as well, right? Practicing and internalize these scripts. There are scripts out there that you may have gotten from Bold before if you went to a previous one, or maybe you've spoken to someone here in the Market Center. There are old scripts that you can grab and use and rehearse. You can pull from one script to the other and combine them based on customer responses. It allows you to sound and feel more natural. It makes you the professional in the real estate field, right? You can control the conversation. You know where the conversation needs to go. You can control that by using something that's purposeful, right? And intentful. It helps you communicate what your value is, what you bring to the table. Those scripts kind of make you feel a little more confident in yourself, and you're able to kind of share that without missing a beat. They help you uncover motives, both sides, buyers and sellers, help you identify what objections might be. You're using scripts already, you just don't know it. And I challenge you to go and think about what those are. It is a rehearsed response that delivers a powerful message in a way that the customer will best understand, right? It takes away ambiguity. It takes away the questions. It can help you solidify the deal, make you look like the professional. It helps you ask questions that are going to be answered quickly without any kind of misunderstanding. It will absolutely help agents of all expertise and of all varying levels of experience and time in real estate. It helps us all gain confidence, right? No situation is the same. And so we all learn, we all continue to grow, and scripts help us, myself included, for sure, to gain confidence in ourselves and our abilities, right? So if you're not using scripts, please do. Those are some reasons why you should. I would tell you to find a script partner, someone that you can role play through this, take some different scenarios, and generally phone calls. Have a phone call where you script that out what that looks like. When you're calling people you haven't spoken with before, maybe you got a lead or referral from a family member. What does that sound like? Find somebody you're comfortable with. I'll be glad to partner with you if you need it, and have that conversation. I'm running short on time. I'm taking up a lot of your time already this morning. And so we're not going to do this. I encourage you to do this on your own, find a script partner, and go through that process. You'll find that both of you are going to get something out of it. And it's just going to make you a better agent and increase your business. Make sure you're calling who you're supposed to and don't call who you're not supposed to, right? If you have questions about the do not call list, I invite you to come into the Market Center and speak to Linda about that, or Chris about that. You can, if you are working with a coach, then you need to approach your coach about that and get a very clear understanding of the compliance do not call list and what that looks like and how you should check the do not call list before calling leads. So make sure that you reach out to your sphere of influence. Make sure that you've got permission to call them first. I would approach it of, hey, this is me. We haven't spoken in a while. This is what I do now. Please let me know if I can help. It's not a sales call. That's an information call. I would start with my sphere of influence that way. You guys can leave from here and go do your own lead generation. I will be doing that until I have an appointment at 1. So I'm going to spend my time here in the office doing some lead gen and making some phone calls and some follow-up calls. Please, I would love to hear about how you guys do with your lead generation today. You can shoot me a text. If you don't have my number, it's 985-264-8626. Again, that's 985-264-8626. Feel free to call me. This is my very first training session. I enjoy helping new people. Everybody was new once. I still consider myself new. So please, if you've got questions or if you just want to bounce something off, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And just one more time, in case nobody got that, 985-264-8626. First name's Brian on Team Navigators. You guys will be able to find me. So I would love to hear your results throughout the day, and that I would challenge you, make sure that you set follow-ups with your clients, put them in command. If they're not already there, set up a task to follow up with them in a few days, and go from there. I wish you guys the best of luck, and I hope you got something out of today. If you have any constructive criticism for anything that I've done today or how we kind of went through that, I look forward to hearing that. You can just give me a call so I can hear inflection in your voice with your feedback, and I will be open to it and make sure that I use it next time. I hope you guys have a great day. Go kill it. Go get 5 new deals today. And you can absolutely do that. Set a goal for appointments, right? Nothing happens without the appointments. Go get the appointments. That's your goal. Go get the appointments today. So I wish you guys the best of luck. Call me if you need me. Thanks for being here today, and I appreciate all of your time. So thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you so much, Brian. That was a great class.
Thank
Yep.
you. I appreciate that. Thanks, guys.